This is Dana HAWKE with the Museum of the American Indian in Novato, and today we're going to have a wild foods class with an indigenous perspective. So today we're talking about stinging nettle, and we're going to cook with stinging nettle today, and this is the nettle right here. And I know that stinging nettle can make people feel nervous, and it may have, a memory. My first memory of stinging nettle was actually falling into a stinging nettle patch when I was a kid. So I had a kind of bad connotation with stinging nettle at first until I discovered it as a food and a tea and a medicine. And now I see it as just a superhero of the plant world. So pretty excited about that. Stinging nettle has iron and calcium, protein, magnesium, potassium, vitamins A, C, K, and B, all of the essential amino acids, polyphenols, and pigments like beta-carotene and lutein. It can help reduce inflammation and pain, especially noted in arthritis patients. So back in the day, people would actually whip themselves with stinging nettle, and it takes away pain. And now, thankfully, there's a nice little cream that you can make actually to help with inflammation in the body, and it takes away the pain. And a lot of people use it to treat hay fever, seasonal allergies. It's amazing for that. And it helps with lower blood pressure and probably a lot of other things. It's just a really amazing source, food source and medicine source. And in my tribe, the Choctaw tribe actually, and probably other tribes too, used it to make fiber for clothing. And that's a really interesting thing. It makes, through the process, it makes a very fluffy, soft fiber. And so in wildcrafting, there's a whole, if you've never wildcrafted before, there's a whole ethics, indigenous way of wildcrafting plants. And the reason why, even though there's intimidation around stinging nettle, the reason why I think it's a good beginner plant is because it's prolific in Marin. And it would be hard to do a lot of damage to the plant. It's just everywhere. And it springs back every year. And so once you get past the intimidation of harvesting it, you can not worry too much about damaging the areas where it grows. So this is from a friend's garden, actually, which is another great idea if you get into wild foods, is to learn how to grow them in your garden. And this is already wilted from yesterday, and already the sting is, I'm not even feeling the sting at all. So it doesn't take much to get, there's different ways to get the sting out. But if you're harvesting it, we'll just talk a little bit about that. You can wear gloves. Usually I wear gloves and take a big brown paper bag. And so if it was growing like this, I would just right into the brown paper bag or a bigger branch. And then pretty quickly the sting goes away or gets milder. And so there's not a lot to worry about if you just kind of get into a new habit of how to harvest. Also, another piece of information in Marin is that they sell it at the farmer's market. So if you want to start there just to get to know the plant, that's a good way to just make friends with this amazing plant. And then you can make a tea, a fresh or dried tea. Fresh nettle tea is incredible. You can just feel like the constituents in the tea. I can. Today we're making a pesto. I'm going to start with making nettle pesto. So a couple of ways that the sting can go away too, really quick, is just heat. And so you can put it in hot boiling water, and the sting immediately goes away. In pesto, if you've ever made classic pesto with basil, it's all raw food. And so also when you crunch this up, I've seen people just pick nettle and just squish it quick enough or they don't feel the sting. Well, the same thing happens in the blender. There's no sting left once you put it in the blender in the pesto recipe. So you don't have to worry if there's nervousness around the sting while eating the nettle. It won't be there. All right, so nettle pesto. If you haven't made classic pesto with basil, it's exactly the same. You just replace the nettle, the basil with a nettle. So what you want to start out with is your blender, and it just takes 4 cloves of garlic, and 3 cups of fresh nettle. And this is just 1 day old nettle. And see, I'm already handling it just with ease, just because it's wilted. But if you get it the same day, you can just snip it right into your measuring cup, and then pour it into your blender. And 1 tablespoon of fresh lemon juice. It didn't have on the table. And then salt and pepper to taste. I actually put hot red chili flakes because I love the little bit of heat, but that's just a personal preference. And 1/4 cup of olive oil, and 3/4 cup of pine nuts. And you can also use walnuts if you want. And I like to toast these a little bit in a pan first. I just like the nuttier flavor. It brings the flavor out more, and I think it's easier for digestion since it's a raw food otherwise. 3/4 cup of grated parmesan. And you just blend it. Just add the ingredients little by little and blend it. And I thought that, because I love classic pesto flavor, I thought I would miss the basil flavor and I'd have to do half and half or something, and I didn't. And it's just as good, if not better. It's a really full flavor, earthy flavor. And you can put it on pasta. You can use it as a dip. You can do a dollop of it on any egg dish is good, or on toast. I mean, anywhere you would put classic pesto, you can use the nettle pesto. All right, so the finished product is this beautiful, dark, rich nettle pesto. And I left some whole pine nuts in there too, because I really like that flavor. And I'm just gonna toss some of this into my pasta. And that's what it looks like. I'm gonna eat it right in front of you. So good. Also, if you're a vegan, I suggest instead of the cheese, you can use nutritional yeast, in which case you want to use a little more oil just to make up for the lack of the moisture that you get from the cheese, and enjoy the amazingly nutritious and delicious and interesting and different nettle pesto.